That was cowardice.
The CEO I loved vanished. Today, he walked back into my boardroom. Fina Anguiano adjusted the sleeves of her emerald suit as she sat at the head of the long glass table. Around her, her team prepared documents, the silence heavy with expectation. This was the biggest deal of her career, and the CEO of Europa Holdings was about to walk through the doors. The handles turned. The doors opened. Adriano Rivas stepped in. The man who had once promised her a future, then disappeared without a word, now stood before her. His hair was touched with gray, his suit flawless, his presence commanding. But his eyes, those same eyes that once held her trust, were filled with something else. Regret. For a moment, Fina could not move. 8 years collapsed into a single breath. She had built an empire, forged her power from heartbreak, yet here was the man who broke her, standing in her boardroom as if he belonged. He spoke with formal courtesy, but every word cut deeper, stirring memories she had locked away. This was not just a business negotiation. It was the return of a ghost she thought she had buried forever. What would you do if the person who destroyed you suddenly walked back into your life, asking for a seat at your table? Tell us where you're watching from, subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story. We promise it'll be just as powerful. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable stories. Fina Anguiano's life in Mexico City was not one of privilege but of persistence. She came from Iztapalapa, a district where resilience was not a choice but a necessity. Her parents worked tirelessly to keep the household afloat, and Fina learned early that her only true wealth was her mind. Every peso saved, every extra hour spent studying, was an investment in a future she refused to let slip away. That determination earned her a place at the prestigious Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de Mexico, where students often arrived in luxury cars while she rode crowded buses, books clutched to her chest. She never complained. For her, every lecture hall was a battleground, and she fought with grades, ideas, and discipline. Professors noticed her brilliance, classmates whispered about her intensity, and recruiters began circling long before graduation. Her first break came with an internship at Innovatech, a fast-rising tech startup in Santa Fe. The headquarters was sleek, all glass walls and sharp lines, a symbol of modern ambition. Fina felt out of place at first, but her ideas quickly spoke louder than her insecurities. She wasn't there to decorate meetings, she was there to transform them. It was in one of those meetings that Adriano Rivas noticed her. He had the presence of someone who had always been obeyed, tall, sharply dressed, with a calm authority that made entire rooms lean in when he spoke. Born into a wealthy Spanish family, Adriano carried European elegance in every gesture, but his eyes lit up with something different when he heard Fina speak. While others hesitated to challenge him, she presented bold solutions, questioning assumptions with a quiet confidence. After the meeting, he stopped her in the hallway. "You're not afraid to tell me I'm wrong," he said, his accent crisp, his smile curious. "I'm not here to flatter you," Fina replied. "I'm here to build something that lasts." That exchange was the beginning. What started as admiration grew into mentorship, and what began as mentorship slowly shifted into something deeper. Adriano invited her to late-night strategy sessions, where ideas spilled into laughter and, eventually, into stolen glances. He introduced her to investors, calling her his sharpest mind, while she showed him the parts of Mexico that money couldn't buy. Together, they walked through Coyoacán at dusk, sharing churros from a street vendor, their conversations drifting from algorithms to dreams. They dined in small fonditas where no one recognized his title, but everyone felt his gaze linger too long on the young woman beside him. On weekends, she took him to lucha libre matches, where the crowd's passion amused him, and to Pulcheria's, where the music seeped into his usually composed demeanor. In return, he took her hand and led her into the world of international finance, teaching her how to read markets as if they were stories written in numbers. To him, she was not just an intern. She was a partner in thought, a mirror for his ambition, and soon, the beating heart of his private world. The night he finally spoke his feelings, they were sitting beneath the trees of Chapultepec Park, the city lights flickering in the distance. "Fina," he said softly, "together we could build something greater than either of us alone. Not just a company, but a legacy. My resources, your ingenuity. My world, your strength. A future without limits." She looked at him, her chest tightening. She had never believed such words could belong to her. But in that moment, under the Mexican sky, she allowed herself to believe. For 2 years, they were inseparable. He promised her more than just success. He promised her a life where her dreams were not impossible but inevitable. She gave him her heart, her trust, and her faith that he would never let go. But faith, she would learn, could be broken. Their life together seemed unstoppable. Ejecutivo was gaining ground in Latin America, their projects drawing attention from major investors abroad. Fina had risen from intern to a trusted strategist, her name now whispered in boardrooms as the woman behind some of Adriano's boldest ideas. To the outside world, they were an unbeatable team. To Fina, they were more partners in every sense of the word. The defining moment came when Ejecutivo pursued a massive investment from a consortium based in Spain. It was the kind of deal that would secure the company's future and elevate Fina into the global arena. Adriano was to travel to Barcelona to finalize negotiations, promising Fina that when he returned, the future they dreamed of would be within reach. He kissed her goodbye at the airport, his words lingering in her mind. "Trust me, Fina. Everything we've worked for is about to change." But change came in a way she never imagined. At first, his calls from Spain were regular. Updates about meetings, quick reassurances of love. Then the calls became shorter, less frequent. Emails came later in the night, sometimes only a few words. Soon, the silence began. Days passed. Then a week. Fina tried to stay calm, telling herself he was overwhelmed by negotiations. But deep inside, unease grew. She dialed his number again and again, always reaching a voicemail that never returned her messages. She wrote emails that bounced back, marked as undeliverable. Then the news came. Not from him, but from the board of directors. A formal email announced that Adriano Rivas had resigned from his position as CEO for urgent personal reasons. His shares had been liquidated, his authority transferred. No explanation, no farewell, no single word directed to her. Fina sat frozen as she read the message, the weight of the betrayal crushing her chest. The man she trusted, the man who spoke of legacies and forever, had disappeared as though he had never existed in her life at all. She went to the office the next morning, demanding answers, but the Spanish associates who dominated the board avoided her eyes. Some claimed ignorance, others simply repeated the official line. To them, Adriano's disappearance was business. To her, it was devastation. The rumors spread quickly. Whispers of scandal, speculation about financial trouble. Some colleagues avoided her, others pitied her. For Fina, humiliation cut deeper than heartbreak. She had given her heart to a man who had not even granted her the dignity of goodbye. The collapse of Ejecutivo followed soon after. Without Adriano's leadership and connections, investors withdrew. Competitors circled like vultures, and within months the company that had once been her home and her hope was swallowed by a larger rival. Fina was left with nothing but memories and a severance package that felt like blood money. She tried to bury her grief in work, but grief has a way of bleeding into every corner of life. She remembered their nights in Coyoacán, his hand in hers beneath Chapultepec's canopy, his promises of a shared empire. Now all of it felt like a cruel joke. Some nights she cried until her voice broke. Other nights she stared at her laptop, forcing herself to write plans for a future she no longer believed in. Trust, she realized, was a fragile thing, and hers had been shattered. Her friends told her to move on. Her family urged her to forget him. But forgetting was impossible. Adriano was not just a lost love. He was a wound, a ghost that would not leave her. Still, in the quietest hours, one truth began to grow inside her. If no one could be trusted, then she would trust herself. If love could be taken away, then she would build her life on something no one could steal, her own strength. The Fina Anguiano who once believed in promises was gone. In her place, a new Fina would rise, forged not in tenderness but in fire. Fina Anguiano refused to let her story end in heartbreak. The pain of Adriano's disappearance had nearly destroyed her, but it also lit a fire she had never known she carried. From the ashes of Innovatech and the ruins of her trust, she made a choice. She would never again allow her future to rest in someone else's hands. She took the small severance package left from the company's collapse and poured it into an idea she had nurtured in silence. In the corner of her modest apartment, surrounded by second-hand furniture and a laptop that overheated after hours of work, she registered her company, Aztlan Analytics. The name was deliberate. Aztlan, the mythical homeland of the Aztecs, stood as a symbol of resilience, of origins that refused to be erased. This was not just a business, it was a declaration of rebirth. Her mission was bold: to transform Latin American agriculture with data-driven solutions. While others saw farming as old-fashioned, Fina saw opportunity. She knew the struggles of campesinos firsthand, how droughts, outdated systems, and foreign competition left them vulnerable. If she could bring technology into their hands, she could give them power, and in doing so she could build her own. At first, no one took her seriously. She arrived at meetings in borrowed suits, sometimes rejected at the door by receptionists who assumed she didn't belong. But she persisted. She studied not just markets, but the land itself, traveling to avocado farms in Michoacán, walking the coffee fields of Chiapas, and speaking directly to families who poured their lives into the soil. She listened more than she spoke, building trust where corporations had only demanded. Her breakthrough came in Jalisco, where a tequila producer faced devastating water shortages. Fina developed a water conservation algorithm that optimized irrigation and reduced waste, saving the company millions of pesos. Word spread quickly. The farmer who once doubted her told others, and soon Aztlan Analytics became the name people whispered when they needed solutions. From there, her company exploded. Investors who once overlooked her now begged for her time. Universities invited her to speak. Articles praised her as a visionary in sustainable agribusiness. And slowly, the girl who once rode buses clutching textbooks became the woman who arrived in sleek black cars, stepping into boardrooms where she was no longer dismissed but respected. Her headquarters moved from her small apartment to a striking eco-friendly glass building in Polanco. The design reflected her values: open spaces, natural light, and gardens woven into the architecture. She built a team around her, not just employees but believers in her mission. They called her La Jefa, not as a nickname, but as recognition of the authority she carried with quiet, commanding grace. Yet, beneath the power there was a wall. Fina had sealed away her heart the day Adriano vanished. She refused to allow herself to be vulnerable again. She dressed impeccably, spoke with precision, and moved through rooms as if nothing could touch her. To her rivals, she was untouchable. To her team, she was inspiring. But alone, in the quiet of her office, she sometimes wondered what it meant to succeed at everything except love. She told herself she didn't need it. Her empire was proof enough that she was whole. The respect she commanded, the farmers she empowered, the industries she transformed, this was her legacy. If love had once been a fire that burned her, then power was the steel that now protected her. But ghosts are stubborn. Even as she conquered new markets, even as Aslan Analytics reached global recognition, the memory of Adriano never left her. Some nights, when she looked out from her office window at the endless lights of Mexico City, she thought of him. Not as the man who betrayed her, but as the man who had once believed in her before anyone else. She didn't allow herself to linger on it for long. She had learned to silence that part of her heart. To her, Adriano Rivas was no longer a man. He was a lesson. A reminder that power built on someone else's promises can vanish overnight. But power built on your own resolve can never be taken away. And so, Fina stood at the height of her triumph, la jefa of a company born from pain. But while she ruled her world, she had no idea that in another country, a man haunted by her memory was preparing to step back into her life. While Fina rebuilt her life in Mexico, Adriano Rivas was living inside a prison with no walls. The morning he vanished from her world, it was not out of choice but obligation. In Spain, his family's empire, Rivas Holdings, was crumbling. His father, worn down by illness, demanded he return. A legacy of vineyards, construction contracts, and political ties was collapsing under the weight of debt and scandal. To keep it alive, Adriano was forced into a bargain. That bargain wore the name of Isabel Della Torre. Heiress of a powerful dynasty, Isabel was not the woman he loved, but she was the key to saving everything his ancestors had built. Their marriage was a transaction, her family's fortune in exchange for his loyalty and silence. On the surface, it was elegant and enviable. Lavish ceremonies, magazine covers, dinners with nobility. But in truth, it was a cage. Adriano had left behind not only Fina, but the man he had been with her. Every night he buried himself in work, restructuring companies, negotiating with banks, attending endless meetings where his smile hid the storm within. He rebuilt Rivas Holdings into one of Spain's most stable empires, but success tasted bitter. In the solitude of his study, late at night, he replayed the moments with Fina, her laughter in a small taco stand, her determination in front of a computer screen, the fire in her eyes when she believed in something. Those memories were the only things he could not control, and they refused to fade. His marriage gave him a daughter, Sofia. Bright, curious, and gentle, she became the one light in his life. Adriano loved her fiercely, and she became his reason to endure the coldness of a union without affection. Isabel lived her own life, immersed in charity galas and aristocratic circles. They coexisted, but they were never truly together. The years passed, and Adriano became both respected and feared in Spain's corporate world. Yet even at the height of his achievements, the shadow of Fina followed him. In boardrooms, he sometimes caught himself comparing sharp young executives to her brilliance. At dinners, the flavor of certain dishes pulled him back to the streets of Mexico City. He lived with a ghost, and he knew it. When Isabel fell ill and eventually passed, the world called Adriano a widower of grace and strength. But privately, he felt only exhaustion. He had fulfilled his duty, protected his family's legacy, and raised his daughter with care. Still, the cost was everything he had once dreamed of with Fina. It was Sofia, with her candid questions, who began to break the silence around his past. One evening, while helping her with homework, she asked why her father always looked sad when speaking of Mexico. Adriano did not answer, but that night he opened an old drawer, pulling out the letter Fina had once written him on the eve of their first big pitch at Innovatech. Her words, full of faith in both their futures, cut deeper than any business failure or personal loss. He realized he could not keep living in the shadow of regret. When an opportunity arose for a European conglomerate to expand into Latin America, Adriano saw more than just a deal. He saw a path back to the world he had abandoned, a chance, perhaps undeserved, to see Fina again. He knew she had become powerful, her name reaching even across the Atlantic. La Jefa, they called her, a woman who had changed the course of Mexican industry. He had watched her rise from afar, equal parts proud and haunted. Now fate, or business, was placing her back in his orbit. But Adriano also knew this. He was not the man she remembered. He carried scars of choices made under pressure, years of sacrifice, and a daughter whose life depended on the empire he had saved. He would walk into that boardroom with all the armor of a CEO, yet beneath it, he was still the man who once loved her beyond reason. And the question that burned in his chest was one he dared not ask. After all this time, after all the pain, could Fina ever look at him again, not as the man who vanished, but as the man who returned? The air inside the boardroom was heavy, though no one spoke of it. On the long glass table lay binders of projections, contracts, and polished slides prepared for the negotiation. Aslan Analytics on one side, the European conglomerate on the other. At the head sat Fina Anguiano, her posture flawless, her emerald suit glowing under the clean light. Her team watched her with quiet reverence. Across from her, Adriano Rivas adjusted his cufflinks. The suit he wore was perfectly tailored, his voice calm, his presence commanding. To an outsider, it was simply a meeting of equals. But beneath the surface, another battle was raging, one invisible to the others in the room. Fina spoke first, her tone even. "We've reviewed your proposal. While your numbers are ambitious, our research suggests adjustments are needed for the Mexican market." Adriano responded smoothly, his accent rich with Spain's lilt. "Of course. But our model accounts for sustainability, something I know you value. We believe this partnership can reshape the region." Their words were business. Their eyes were war. Each glance carried history. Each pause was weighted with the memory of 1,000 unsaid things. Her team noticed the edge in her voice, sharper than usual. They noticed, too, the way Adriano's gaze lingered not on the slides, but on her face, as if the past refused to stay buried. Yet neither lost composure. Fina leaned forward slightly. Aslan Analytics has never needed foreign validation. We built success from nothing, on our terms. Adriano's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "That is what I've always admired about you. You build empires where others see wastelands." A murmur rippled through the room. Compliments had no place here. Still, he said it with such control that no one dared challenge him. The negotiations pressed on. Numbers shifted across screens, percentages debated, clauses dissected. But the real clash was wordless. Adriano's attempt to reach her across the gulf of years, and Fina's iron will to keep the wall between them intact. When the final terms were drafted for review, the tension still lingered. Fina closed her binder with deliberate care. "We will consider your offer and return with our decision." Adriano stood. His chair slid back with a soft scrape, yet the sound carried through the silence. He buttoned his jacket, then gave her a formal nod. Thank you for your time, Ms. Anguiano. The formality stung. Sharp. Cold. She mirrored it. Safe travels back to Madrid, Mr. Rivas. But the truth was neither of them was leaving yet. The deal still needed final review. And more than that, their battle was unfinished. As the team filed out, whispers filling the hallway, Adriano remained. He stood by the glass wall overlooking Mexico City, his silhouette outlined against the skyline. The others were gone. Only Fina remained, gathering her notes with slow precision. She did not look up, but she felt his eyes on her. Finally he spoke, not with the rehearsed voice of a CEO, but with the unguarded weight of a man. Fina, may I have a word with you? Alone. Fina didn't answer immediately. She closed her binder, placed her pen on top, and finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes met his, steady, unreadable. For years, she had imagined this moment. She had rehearsed what she would say if she ever saw him again. But none of those imagined words came. Instead, silence stretched between them. 5 minutes, she said at last, her voice crisp. She gestured toward her private office adjoining the boardroom. Without waiting, she walked ahead. Adriano followed. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Gone was the polished boardroom with its clean lines and distant formality. Here, the space was personal. Family photos, a framed copy of the first article that called her La Jefa, a map of Mexico covered in pins marking the region she had transformed. This was not a battlefield. It was her fortress. She closed the door softly and leaned against her desk, arms crossed. Say what you need to say, Adriano. Then leave. He stood near the window, hands resting at his sides, his usual armor of composure cracked. His voice, when it came, was low and rough. I owe you the truth. All of it. No more letters, no more silences. Fina said nothing. Her heartbeat quickened, but her face gave nothing away. Adriano drew a breath. The day I left, it wasn't because I stopped loving you. It was because my father was dying, and my family's world was collapsing. I was dragged into a marriage with Isabel de la Torre, not by love, but by necessity. Their fortune saved Rivas Holdings. My silence, it was the price I paid. Her hands tightened around her arms. The name felt like ice sliding down her spine. You expect me to believe that? That you vanished, without a word, because you had no choice? Yes. His answer came swiftly, but his voice trembled. Because if I had told you, I would have begged you to wait. And you deserved better than a life chained to my family's debts, to a marriage I couldn't escape. I thought leaving cleanly would free you. Instead, I destroyed you. Her chest ached, but she forced her voice steady. Destroyed me? You humiliated me. You left me holding the pieces of a company we built together, without even the decency of a goodbye. Do you know how many nights I called you, begged you for answers? Do you know how it feels to be erased? He flinched, as though each word was a blow. Every night, Fina. I know because I lived with that same emptiness. My marriage was cold, my success hollow. I rebuilt an empire, but without you, it was nothing. The only joy I had was my daughter, Sophia. But even she saw through me. She asked why her father carried sadness he couldn't name. The question hung in the air like a dare. For the first time, his voice broke. His hand lifted as though to reach for her, but he stopped midway, letting it fall. I never stopped loving you. Not one day. I buried it under duty, under silence, under every mask I wore, but it never left me. The room seemed to contract. Fina's throat tightened, though she fought to keep her expression composed. She wanted to believe him, yet the years of pain anchored her. "You speak of love," she said slowly, "but love doesn't vanish without warning. Love doesn't leave unanswered calls and unsigned letters. Love doesn't break a woman until she thinks she'll never trust again." Adriano stepped closer, his voice urgent but soft. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I came here prepared for your hatred, but I couldn't stay away any longer. I needed you to know the truth, even if it changes nothing." Fina looked away, her gaze falling on the framed article that praised her as Mexico's visionary leader. She had built this empire from pain, from betrayal, from the ashes of his absence. She was stronger now. She didn't need him. And yet, his words stirred something buried deep, something she had sworn she'd killed long ago. Finally, she asked, her voice almost a whisper, "Why now? After all these years?" Adriano exhaled, as though the question cut straight through him. "Because life is short, Fina. Because I lost too much already. And because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving this world without looking into your eyes again and telling you, I never stopped loving you." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Fina's heart pounded. For a moment, she saw not the CEO, not the ghost of betrayal, but the man she had once loved under the streetlights of Mexico City, when dreams felt limitless. But then she blinked, and the weight of the past returned. She straightened her shoulders, steel settling back into her bones. "You said your truth," she murmured. "Now let me give you mine. You may have loved me, Adriano, but you broke me. And broken things don't mend just because the person who shattered them decides to return." His jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. "I understand." The storm between them lingered, unresolved, as the hum of the city outside filled the silence. Fina moved to the window, her arms still crossed tightly across her chest. The view stretched over Paseo de la Reforma, the angel of independence glowing golden in the fading light. She stood tall, her reflection on the glass a reminder of everything she had become. She wasn't the wide-eyed intern anymore. She was the woman who built an empire with her own hands. Adriano stayed near her desk, his shoulders heavy with the weight of years. His silence was not the silence of arrogance, but of a man who feared a single wrong word would end everything. Fina's voice cut through the stillness. "Do you know what it took to rebuild myself after you left? Nights sleeping on a floor, days knocking on doors no one wanted to open. Every failure, every rejection, your absence echoed in it. You taught me love could vanish like smoke. So, I buried that part of me." Her words trembled with anger and grief. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. "And now you stand here, years later, telling me you never stopped loving me? Do you even understand what that does to me?" Adriano stepped forward, cautious, like a man approaching a flame. "It wasn't just words, Fina. Every deal I closed, every night I sat in boardrooms across Europe, I thought of you. I saw your face in every decision I made, and I hated myself for what I'd done. My daughter, she is my only joy." But even she asked why her father looked as though he was missing half his heart. "That half was you." Fina's chest rose sharply. His words pierced the armor she had worn for years, but she fought to keep it intact. "You could have written one message, one explanation. Something," she pressed, her voice shaking now. "But you chose silence. That wasn't love, Adriano. That was cowardice." His composure broke. His voice cracked as he replied, "You're right. It was cowardice. I thought if I disappeared, if I cut you off completely, it would hurt less for you. That you'd move on, build a life untouched by my family's chains. Instead, I chained you to my ghost." Fina's tears finally spilled, though she quickly wiped them away. "You did. Every success I earned was fueled by anger at you. I became who I am because you broke me. Do you understand the irony of that? You abandoned me, and in doing so, you built me." Adriano's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "Then let me say what I never said. I am sorry. Sorry for every unanswered call. Sorry for every night you cried alone. Sorry for being too weak to fight for us. I don't want forgiveness, Fina. I just want a chance. Not to erase the past. I know I can't, but to prove to you that I will never walk away again." The words hung in the air. Fina stared at him, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. A battle raged inside her. The fierce, unyielding leader who had sworn never to need him again, and the woman who had once loved him so deeply it had colored every corner of her world. She whispered, almost to herself, "Why do I still feel this? After everything?" Adriano moved closer, his voice low, almost breaking. "Because what we had was real. And real love doesn't vanish. It waits. It survives. Even if it takes years. Even if it takes losing everything." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the city below. Fina closed her eyes, fighting against herself, but when she opened them again, the anger had softened, just slightly. She stepped back from the window, her arms uncrossing at last. Her voice trembled but carried strength. "You say you want a chance. A chance for what, Adriano? For me to forget. To pretend those years didn't happen." "No," he said quickly, shaking his head. "Not to forget. To start again. To love you openly this time, without lies, without cages, without obligations that don't belong to us. I can't rewrite our past, Fina, but I can offer you every moment of my future." Her breath caught. His words, raw and stripped of pretense, struck something deep inside her. She had waited years for an explanation, for remorse. And here it was, not polished, not convenient, but real. Fina's eyes searched his, looking for a crack, a false note. But all she saw was sincerity, and a man as broken as she once was, standing before her with nothing but truth. Her lips parted, but no words came at first. The tears she had fought for years finally slipped free, softening her sharp composure. "Adriano," she began, her voice unsteady. "You hurt me in ways I thought I'd never recover from. You don't deserve me. But," she paused, her chest heaving, the war inside her finally reaching its peak. "But my heart has never stopped remembering you." Adriano's breath hitched, as though the air had been stolen from him. He took one more step toward her, now only a breath away. "If there's even the smallest piece of you that still loves me," he whispered, "then let me spend the rest of my life proving that I will never leave again." Silence stretched. Fina stood frozen, her body torn between resistance and surrender. Finally, her hand lifted, trembling, and rested against his chest. She felt the rapid beat of his heart, real and vulnerable beneath the expensive suit. Her whisper came like a confession. "I still love you." Adriano closed his eyes, his own tears falling now. He reached up, covering her hand with his, as if anchoring himself to her presence. The air shifted between them. Years of pain, longing, and silence pressed into this one fragile moment, balanced between ruin and redemption. The weight of the moment pressed down on both of them. Fina's hand still rested on his chest, feeling his heartbeat quick and unsteady. Years of anger and silence warred with the raw confession she had just heard. For so long she had imagined this confrontation ending with her shutting the door on him forever. But now, standing this close, her strength wasn't in rejection. It was in choosing whether to love again without fear. Adriano held her hand gently, as if terrified she might pull away. His voice was low, breaking at the edges. "Say the word, Fina, and I'll walk out that door forever. But if there's still a place for me, even the smallest corner, I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life filling it with nothing but love." She studied him for a long time. The man before her wasn't the untouchable CEO who had once dazzled her. He wasn't the ghost who had haunted her nights. He was something else now, a man stripped of excuses, standing vulnerable and human. Fina finally exhaled, her voice soft but steady. "You shattered me, Adriano. But I rebuilt myself. Not for you, not for revenge. For me. I became whole without you. And maybe that's why I can stand here today and tell you, I'm strong enough to give you another chance." Adriano's eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming relief washing over him. He reached for her other hand, holding both as though they were the most precious things he had ever touched. "You mean it," he whispered, his forehead lowering close to hers. Her lips curved, faint but sure. "Yes. But this time, I'm not the girl waiting for promises under the lights of Coyoacan. I'm not the intern hoping for a seat at your table. I am Fina Anguiano, the woman who built her own empire. If you want a place in my life now, you come as my equal, not my savior. Do you understand?" His chest rose sharply, emotion breaking through his composed facade. "I wouldn't dare ask for anything less. You are my equal, my partner, the love I was a fool to lose." For the first time in 8 years, she allowed herself to smile. Not the smile of victory, but the quiet smile of release. Slowly, she leaned into him, her forehead resting against his. The tension that had carried through their every word softened into something tender, fragile, but undeniably alive. The kiss came unhurried, as if both were afraid it might vanish if they moved too fast. It wasn't the reckless passion of their youth. It was deeper, steadier, laced with pain, forgiveness, and the possibility of a new beginning. When they finally pulled apart, her cheeks were damp with tears, but her eyes shone with something she had thought she'd buried forever. Adriano brushed her cheek gently, his hand trembling. "Gracias," he whispered, "for giving me this chance. I won't waste it." Fina placed her hand over his. "Don't thank me. Prove it. Show me every day that this time you're here to stay." He nodded, solemn and certain. "I will." They stood together in her office, the city stretching out beyond them. The angel of independence glowed brightly outside her window, a silent witness to the turning of their story. This wasn't the end of her strength, it was the evolution of it. She had built an empire alone. Now, she was allowing love back into her life not because she needed it, but because she chose it. The door to the boardroom remained closed, the world outside unaware that inside, 2 lives had just shifted course. Fina had faced the ghost of her past, confronted him, and chosen, not vengeance, not rejection, but love born from resilience. Her voice was calm, certain, when she spoke again. "Tomorrow, the negotiations continue. Aslan Analytics and Europa Holdings will move forward, but on my terms. Professionally, We'll work as partners. Personally, she paused, meeting his gaze with unwavering strength. Personally, we'll take one step at a time. Adriano smiled, the kind of smile she remembered from years ago, the smile that had first disarmed her, but now carried humility behind it. One step at a time, he echoed. Fina finally turned back toward her desk, reclaiming her seat as the leader she was. Adriano remained standing, watching her with reverence, as though truly understanding for the first time that this woman, this queen, was giving him not just a chance, but a gift beyond measure. The story did not end with bitterness or revenge. It ended with strength, with love reborn, with a woman who proved that forgiveness is not weakness, but the greatest power of all. And as the evening settled over Mexico City, Fina Anguiano and Adriano Rivas began a new chapter, one not defined by abandonment or silence, but by the courage to love again. Do you believe people deserve second chances in love? Tell us in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable love stories like this one.